Person raised the defense of alibi at the time. In order to infer malice aforethought, and they should look at these elements.
For the sanction for the case of attempted murder.
Omulamuzi ekyo kizze Katonda yateeka nti nakuyita mu kkubo eryo naye kubadde nsaba kkooti embeerera ya kisa ebe ebbanga lyange limaze kulimunda nebensabira kuba nina famire nina abaana 12 nina abakyala 2 omu mpangisa ate n'emyezi jaggwayo dda neewaabe bamugoba agendako ewa kyamaani n'amusuzaako emyezi 8 kyamaani naye n'amukoowa n'agenda ewaabwe abaana nga bangi bamukoowa ate enjala nnyingi ne baali balimira baabagobawo batewali asasula.
So that is in respect to the plea for reduction of the sentence in relation.
Awekitiibwa kkooti kati esalawo negamba nti nsazeewo njagenda n'ekyo naye ekyo ebadde ekisaba
nsaba kkooti eno n'obuwombeefu bungi mpa ekibonezo ekisaamusaamu nina abaana 9 nina abazeeyi bendabirira bali 4 naye kati ebbanga lino simanyi bwe bali n'olwekyo nsaba kkooti eno embeerera kisa mpa ekibonezo ekisaamusaamu ng'ebbanga limaze kulimangi.
I'm tired of suffering. I've suffered a lot and I've faced a lot of challenges. As per now, I'll be done now. I'll be doing my course I want to be a doctor. I'll be now trying to work out my course of medicine. But now, I'm just in secondary.
How old are you now?
I'm 20 years now.
Okay. Is that all?
Yes.
Section 2 of the section provides that it is immaterial, 1, except as so far as regards punishment, whether the offender does all that is necessary on his or her part for completing the commission of the offense, or whether the complete fulfillment of his or her intention is prevented by circumstances independent of his or her will, or whether the offender desists of his or her own motion from the further prosecution of his or her intention. B, that by reason of circumstances not known to the offender, it is impossible, in fact, to commit the offense. It is incumbent upon the prosecution to prove all the elements to the required standard, which, according to the authority of Bloomington versus DPP, a 1935 case, page 462, and Ssembatya versus Uganda, 1967, East Africa, page 53, should erase all reasonable doubt of the accused's commission of the crime with malicious intent. Evaluation of evidence. The unlawful intention to cause death of another, which we call malice aforethought. Section 191 of the Penal Code Act provides for malice aforethought to mean an intention to cause the death of another person, whether such person is the person actually killed or not, or knowledge that the act or omission causing death would probably cause the death of some person, whether such person is the person actually killed or not, although such knowledge is accompanied by indifference, whether death is caused or not, or by a wish that it may not be caused. From the definition of malice aforethought, we can see that it is a mental element. It is a mental element of crime which cannot be understood unless the circumstances are properly investigated. PW1 was injured and had sustained dangerous, life-threatening injuries. The testimony of the victim that the panga, which was found close to the scene of crime, was the very weapon used against him, was never contravened or disputed. The medical reports exhibited as prosecution exhibit number 1, prosecution exhibit number 2, PE3, PE4, and PE5 all emphasize the gravity of the injuries. A close analysis of P exhibit number 2 indicates that the victim, Ssembatya, was missing a bone on the right side of the skull and had very long, wide scars. There was also loss of brain tissue on the right side. Evidence on prosecution exhibit number 3 indicates that the victim's right testes were no longer viable because of the injury made into the scrotum. All these are vulnerable parts of the body, and therefore injury to them is a manifestation of malice aforethought. Element number 2, manifestation of that intention by an overt act. On court record, there is evidence of PW1, PW2, PW3, PW4, and PW5, even PW6, to prove that the victim suffered repeated injuries on the most vulnerable parts of the body. The weapon used is a panga, which is known to inflict dangerous harm on a human body in the case used, and in most cases can even cause death. This evidence makes it clear that the nature of the harm proves that there was an overt act. During the hearing, A1, that is accused number 1 and accused number 2, raised the defense of alibi. In other words, they were saying we were not at the scene of crime at the time of the offense. A1 stated that he left his home village, Nichamimbi, at 8 a.m. and traveled to Buyobya through Kanjuchi, and that he returned to his home at about 10 p.m. Accused number 2 also testified that on the date when the offense is said to have been committed, he left his home village of Busolo at 4 p.m. and traveled to Kayunga Trading Center to sell milk and returned home at about 8 p.m. Defense prayed for the times taken on remand. I find that the accused were determined to kill the victim and left him for dead only to survive by God's grace. The nature of the weapon that was used, the panga, on a 6-year-old child, the parts of the body that were targeted, the visible scars that can still be seen, and once again the age of the victim, the permanent injunction, the permanent damage occasioned, all override the mitigating factors. So in the circumstances, I find that the accused showed no remorsefulness throughout the trial. Actually, I note that the accused survived being charged with the offense of aggravated trafficking, because this is purely a child sacrifice case. But here we have a survivor who is before us. So they are lucky that they were charged with a lesser offense. Of course, I would not have had the chance to hear this case, otherwise it would have been the High Court. I hereby sentence each of the accused person to 40 years in prison. These 40 years, I will subtract the period spent on remand. For A1, that is Awali Kivumbi, minus 5 years, minus 7 months. This gives me 34 years and 5 months. For A2, Ngaswireki Paul, 40 years, minus 5 years, minus 10 months spent on remand. This gives me 34 years and 2 months, and so on.
Mpulira bulungi kubanga nfunye justice. Gyenvudde wala tebibadde byangu, sente ziyiise, nkoze kyonna ekisoboka. Naye olw'ekisa kya Katonda neebaza Mukama. Era njagala okukkiriza emmeeme yange newankubadde waliwo ebyenjawulo ebikoseddwa eri omwana wange. Nina obugumu obutono kubanga mulamu. Ekisinga okuba okunsanyusa, obudde bubadde buwanvu, obweraliikirivu bubadde buwanvu, naye munda mu nze ntukudde nti amazima gamaze ne galabika. Nayonoona ssente nnyingi ng'omuntu. Natunda buli kyange, eyali ali obulungi n'enfuuka omwavu, n'enfuna okusekererwa naye nga gwali musaayi gwange. Naye mu byonna Katonda yanzijukira nampa ekitongole ekisobodde okulwana omwana ono okumulongosa. Saalisobodde, sente zaali nnyingi, naye n'okusigala olwaleero nga mulamu. Ate era bayimiriddewo paka ne ku nkomerero y'omusango paka lwe tuwangudde.
Nebaza Mukama Katonda kuba ansobozesezza okutuuka ku buwanguzi. Obuwanguzi bwano obw'okusala omusango tebadde kyangu kusala musango guno, naye Katonda atuyambye. Omulamuzi n'abeera mwesigwa gye tuli, ne Katonda n'abeera naffe ne tugumaliriza, era kati ndi musanyufu. Nandibasonyiye singa bayogera ekituufu kuba nabalaba, era nze kyenayogera kyennyini kyenalaba kyenayogera, ate bo ne bagezaako okutaataganya ensonga. Naye singa basalawo bakkiriza mangu, ekyo nandibadde nyimirira ne mbasonyiwa.
The Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions relied on direct evidence and circumstantial evidence to prove the case against the convicts beyond reasonable doubt. The direct evidence that was used came from the victim, who testified by identifying the convicts as the ones who committed the offense. The circumstantial evidence that was relied upon was mainly the medical reports of the victim. We appreciate the judgment delivered by the court because it signifies justice for the victim. We had initially gotten acquittals in this case, and the Office of the DPP appealed to the High Court, which ordered for the retrial of the matter. Because this enabled him to testify in court against the convicts, his testimony was very vital for the successful determination of this case. We would have charged the convicts under the Prevention of Trafficking in Persons Act, but this case was committed 2 days before that act was passed as law, and so we couldn't charge under that act, unfortunately.
Tuli basanyufu of course kubanga obulamu bwa Omwana Allan then we bamusaddakira yali wa myaka 6 kati wa myaka 2 yeyogerera kitutte emyaka 14 okulaba nti kkooti evaayo okuwa ensala ey'amazima, era tuli basanyufu. Kituwa essuubi nti emisango egirudde gisobola okuba nga giwulirwa ate mu bwenkanya. N'ekyokubiri nti omusango guno gutuwa ekyokulabirako nti yadde omusango oguluddewo ebbanga ddene gusobola okuddizibwa mu kkooti ne guwozesebwa mu mazima, amazima ne galabika. Eri Omwana Allan tubadde naye okuva nga muto akuze yeeyogerera. Nsuubira nti ensalawo ya kkooti eneemuwa okumanya nti eggwanga lyafaayo nnyo okulaba nti abantu abamutuusaako obukosefu batwalibwa mu mateeka ne bavunaanyizibwa nga bwe balina okuvunaanyizibwa. Tusindika okulabula nti buli muntu yenna eyeewaddeyo okutuusa ebisago ku mwana yenna, ebbanga ne bwe liba liyiseewo, amateeka gali musanga kubanga waliyo abantu mu community n'ebitongole ebyewaddeyo okulaba nti birwanira eddembe ly'abaana. Ffe nga Kyaka Ministries tuli bagumu okulaba nti tugoberera ensonga ezo ezikwata ku baana ate n'okulwanira eddembe lyabwe.
Sofa nina emyaka 36 ku kyendabye y'emyaka gye basalidde Baganda baffe mu bufunze kuba wazaalibwa ng'oli wa mwaka gumu paka na kati. Ne kkooti esaze mazima, sijaga nti tekoze bubi, esaze mazima meereere kuba nti omwana gwe baatuusaako ebikolwa ebyo afuna amazima. Naye nabano bwe tusabira gavumenti nti ne bannaffe abalala abali mu makomera mubajjukire mubaleete mu makomera. Bangi baleeta Nabukenya baafa, abaana bangi bafudde nga poliisi yebatuusaako obuliisa maanyi obutemu ne bafa ne bafudde mu mbeera bwetyo, bangi bakyali mu makomera. Gavumenti era naye eveeyo ejajinga emisango egyo abo baba abasirikale bavunaane ereme kuvunaanako bamu na bamu ba civilian, so n'abasirikale bangi bakola ebikolobero ebyo.
Kabonero eri abantu bonna era mawulire manene oba mangi manene okuba agenda mu community gye tukolera nti bw'onoobanga ozizza omusango ogwekuusa ku kino ekyokuponyaponya eddembe ly'omwana okulirinyirira amanya nti nekinaakutuukako kijja kusingawo ku kino kituusiddwa ono ku baana olwaleero.
For the second phase, A2 has been on remand for 3 years and 7 months.
That is A2?
That's, yes, A2, February 2019.
So A2 was arrested earlier?
Earlier, yes.
Earlier, okay.
Yes. Dates.
So for A1?
For A1 was arrested and remanded on the 3rd.
That is for both accused persons?
For both accused persons. They were subsequently tried and acquitted on the 20th of February 2012.
So all this time
they were in prison for any person who is going to be sentenced and guides court in that respect. Okay? Which provides for the sanction for the case of attempted murder.
Nani? Sergeant?